Do you want to make your own podcast? I would highly suggest Anchor. Anchor is a free website and app that lets you record your podcast from anywhere at any time. You can record in your car, you can record on a train, you can even just record in your home. And with Anchor, you can also cut out parts of your podcast because you can also edit your episodes inside of the Anchor app or website. And also you can add music that is non-copyrighted, so you can just add sounds or music to your episodes that you don't have to worry about the episodes being copyright striked or anything like that. And then Anchor can also distribute your podcast for free. That's right, for free. You can distribute it to Spotify, which most people are listening to right now, and you can basically distribute to any podcast app or website that you can imagine, basically. So if you do want to get started, you can use the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm. Again, you can go to the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm and tell them High Scores Podcast sent you. Now back to the episode. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of me predicting the NFL games, and this week is going to be the Week 6 predictions. It's crazy that we're already in Week 6. We're almost halfway through the season. I just remember back when the season was about to start, and now we're already at Week 6, so that's pretty crazy. But let's get right into the first game of Week 6. So now the first game of Week 6 is tomorrow, Thursday Night Football. We got the Buccaneers versus the Eagles. And the Eagles coming off of a win against the Panthers, 21-18, which is a pretty close one, and a pretty good win over a really good defense, in my opinion, and a really young defense, and then also a pretty good offense. I mean, maybe if Christian McCaffrey was there, the Eagles might have lost, but I still think the Panthers have a really good offense, especially with Sam Darnold, Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore. I believe DJ Moore only on fantasy got about 9 points, so it was a pretty tough week for the Panthers, but the Eagles were able to come through with the win, and the Buccaneers coming off of a pretty dominant win over the Dolphins, winning 34-16, I think, and that was a pretty bad game for the Dolphins, and really good for the Buccaneers. I had Tom Brady starting one of my leagues. Unfortunately, I had Mike Evans in one of the leagues, and I benched him, and then I proceeded to lose by 2 points because of Patrick Mahomes. So it was kind of tough to see that I missed out on about 30 points with Mike Evans. And then also I also benched Mark Andrews, but I'll talk about that later on. But this Buccaneers-Eagles matchup, it does seem pretty one-sided, but I'm going with an upset for this week, and I'm going the Eagles over the Buccaneers. Now, this was not easy to do at all for predictions, but I think the Eagles have a really good offense, and they're able to use that to their advantage, especially Jalen Hurts, who's shown some really good glimpses of being the next good quarterback in the league, and the Buccaneers having some defensive troubles because of the injuries that they've had throughout the season, and then also Richard Sherman, who does look like he's getting better now that he's learning more about the playbook, but that defense does seem like it has some holes in it, and I think the Eagles offense could definitely take advantage of that and kind of use that to their advantage. But as for the Eagles, I think their Eagles defense, that's something that's going to be hard to see if they can really defend against Mike Evans and company in Tampa Bay. But I just think the Eagles are going to win here mainly because of the Buccaneers' defensive holes, their defensive struggles, and also their offense sometimes isn't on the same page. So maybe they might get that type of offense against Philadelphia. But here I got Philadelphia winning this one. Now, speaking of the Dolphins, the next matchup on the list is the Dolphins versus the Jaguars. Dolphins, again, coming off of a bad loss against the Buccaneers. And then the Jaguars coming off of yet another loss to, let me see here, coming off of a loss against the Titans. There you go, the Titans coming off a loss against the Titans, and this one was a really tough decision again, because the Dolphins just are really having some pretty bad offensive struggles, mainly because Tua is injured, and then the Jaguars obviously just haven't really been doing that good, and that's why they haven't won any games this season. So it was a tough matchup to see who would win or who would lose, but I do have Jacksonville winning this one. I think Jacksonville will end up winning their first game, and it's going to be really close. In my opinion, I think it's going to be really close. Jaguars, not the best team, but they're looking for their first win, and I think they can definitely get it here against the Dolphins, who have some offensive struggles, and clearly some defensive struggles. Last year, their defense was really good, but it seems like losing some pieces in the offseason, and also some players just not wanting to play for the team does kind of show on defense. And the Dolphins defense does not look that good, but and I think the Jaguars, they've been picking up the pace a little bit over the season, so I do think they could definitely get their first win over the Dolphins this week. Now, the third game of the week, we have the Chiefs versus Washington, and I got the Chiefs winning this one. The Chiefs coming off of a loss against the Bills, which was really surprising. I mean, yeah, to me it was really surprising, but just watching the game just didn't look that good. And I definitely think this is the Chiefs' hangover year, the Super Bowl hangover curse type of thing. And it's definitely showing here. They're getting some losses against really good teams who they're definitely going to have to play against in the AFC Championship, or in the wild card if they are even going to be in the wild card. So it's looking really tough for the Chiefs. And yeah, against some really good teams, they're getting losses, which are against teams that they're going to have to play against in the playoffs. And then also just their offense doesn't look on the same page. Their defense obviously has some injuries on it. So especially moving Chris Jones to defensive end instead of from defensive tackle, that's obviously showing on their outside run defense, because he's not able to keep up with the running backs because of the speed difference there. So the Chiefs are just letting a lot of rushing yards go through, and that's a really big loss for them. Now Washington, I believe, let me check the list. Washington is coming off of a loss against the Saints, which was pretty interesting because they did have a pretty good game in the first half, and then the Saints kind of picked it up again, and then they were able to win. So I'm really not too sure what they're gonna do here, but the Chiefs, I think, just have a really good offense. This is a bounce back week that I think they're gonna be able to have. It's not against a really good team, and so far all the Chiefs wins have really been against teams that aren't that good, in my opinion. I mean, besides the Browns week 1, but that was kind of a situational win, because if the punter didn't muff the punt, I think that, the Browns would have won that one. And then the Chiefs are kind of just beating up on teams that aren't really as good as what they're going to be facing in the playoffs once again. So again, I do think they're going to win this one over Washington, mainly because of their high-powered offense, and Washington really hasn't been able to stop much this year. Last year their defense was really good, so I was expecting more from them this season, but they haven't really been showing what they were doing with Chase Young and Will Compton and Kerrigan before. I mean, Kerrigan did leave, but their defense just looked like they were going to be able to do it again, but so far they haven't been able to, and I think the Chiefs are going to be able to use that, and then throw some deep balls. And then also Washington's offense. I'm still not too sure if J.D. McKissick and their Antonio Gibson is going to come back from injury. So that is a watch on this game. See, maybe they could win this one through their rushing attack, but I do have the Chiefs winning this one just because of their offense. Our next game on the list, we have the Bengals versus the Lions. Now, the Bengals coming off of an overtime loss against the Packers, which that was a pretty tough game to watch because Mason Crosby and Evan McPherson both missed kicks in overtime to win the game. So that was really hard to watch. Both teams missed a field goal, and then he was able to come back and then kick that field goal. So, Mason Crosby did win the game for the Packers on that one, but it was a pretty tough loss for the Bengals, being that close to being a really good team. And I think that would have boosted, the hype for them to be more of a playoff team. I think they're going to be a playoff team in like the next, maybe next year. I'm not too sure about this year because they do look like they're missing some pieces. I think they could make the playoffs this year, but I don't think they're going to be a long-lasting playoff team if they do make it. I think they're just probably going to be a one and done. They're going to make it to the wild card and then exit out that same round because they don't have the same amount of weapons as many playoff teams do. So I do think if they get another wide receiver on the team, I think they'll be set. Maybe some better defensive linemen and offensive linemen. I think they'll be pretty good, especially now that Joe Burrow just got another injury with a throat contusion, but it does look like he's going to be in for this game, so that is good news for the Bengals. And then the Lions coming off of a tough loss again from a kick, but this one is against a Vikings kicker. And as a Lions fan, this one hurt because the one time the Vikings kicker wants to make a game-winning field goal has to be against the Lions. Back-to-back weeks, Lions are up 17-16, and then a game-winning field goal. The week prior, week 4, Justin Tucker kicks the record-breaking field goal, and then this past week, week 5, Vikings kick a field goal to win the game. And really at this point, it's just the Lions' lack of defensive backs, in my opinion, because you gave the Vikings only 30 seconds to drive down to about their own 35-yard line, and they got there with 2 pretty deep shots. I think both to Adam Thielen, or that last one was to Adam Thielen, is what I remember. So, they were really slacking, especially Amani Oruwariye was guarding Justin Jefferson, and Justin Jefferson had a really good game. And then, Adam Thielen at the end of the game was able to get 2 big receptions, and the Vikings were able to kick a field goal. So it was a tough game to watch. Just the Lions always get up, and then boom, something, field goal. So I think mainly it's just the defense right there in those final moments. They just end up giving away some yardages or some big gains. So that's going to be tough to watch. But the Bengals, I do have the Bengals winning this one. The Bengals have a really good offense. Obviously, Jamar Chase, who I've been hearing is a favorite to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. And then Joe Burrow, obviously, is going to possibly be in this game. I think he's most likely going to play in this game, from what I've heard, just because of it looks like his throat's going to get better by the time that they have to play the Lions, and it looks like they've cleared him. So he is most likely going to play in this game. And then their defense, especially Jesse Bates, has been doing really good. So I do think the Bengals are going to be able to win this one, but I do think it is going to be close, but I do have Bengals winning this one. Now, next matchup, we got the Raiders versus the Broncos. Now, obviously, the Raiders coming off of a loss against the Bears, and also now them losing their head coach, John Gruden, to some controversial things. But the Raiders, now have their special teams coordinator as head coach, as interim head coach right now. So I'm really not too sure how well he's going to do. Their special teams, it looks, I mean, I don't really know how you can judge special teams, but hopefully he is a pretty good interim head coach. Then the Broncos coming off of a pretty surprising win over the Steelers. And I think, or not surprising, at least to me, it wasn't really surprising. I was rooting for them this game. I think many people didn't really expect the Broncos to win this one, but Juju is obviously out for the season for the Steelers. And then, it looks like that Ben Roethlisberger injury is affecting him a little bit more. So I do think that's why the Broncos came out with a win here. But for this matchup, I do have the Raiders winning this one. I think their defense is able to, contain the Broncos' offense. And then also, I'm not too sure if Teddy Bridgewater is going to play. I believe he is, but I'm unsure of it. I think he was in last week, so he is probably going to be in this week. And then the Raiders' offense, really high-powered offense, obviously. They just weren't really able to do anything against both the Bears or the Chargers. So they've been on a 2-week skid, but I do think this game is going to be where they pick it up again and they start racking in some wins in the win column. But I do think it's going to be really close. That Broncos defense looks like it's going to be the no-fly zone 0.2 because it's just really good. I think their defense is good. They obviously have some holes because it is a younger defense than the no-fly zone original was with Aqib Talib in them. But I do think this defense is really good, but I do have the Raiders winning this one. Now the next game on the list, the Vikings versus the Panthers. The Vikings coming off of a win against the Lions, obviously, with that game-winning field goal. And then the Panthers coming off of a loss against the Eagles. And I think for this one, I'm going to have to take the Panthers. It was really close for me to pick this matchup because the Vikings and Panthers, I do think, are on kind of the same level. They have a pretty good quarterback, or a decent quarterback at that. They have a pretty good run game, even though they got their backup running back in. And then they have two good wide receivers. Both teams have two good wide receivers. And both teams have really good defenses. So it was really tough to pick a team here. But I do have the Panthers winning this one just because I do think their wide receivers are able to go over that secondary. I think they're going to be able to get open. And also the run game, I think, is just a lot better. I think the offensive linemen that the Panthers have will be enough to contain that really dynamic defensive line that they have with Danielle Hunter and Everson Griffin, who was a nightmare for Jared Goff and the Lions' offensive line. So I do have the Panthers winning this one because of their defense, and also they have a really high-powered offense. Next on the list is the Texans versus the Colts. And so the Texans, I believe, are coming off of a loss to New England, which wasn't really surprising there. And then the Colts coming off of a heartbreaking loss to the Ravens in overtime, losing 31-25. Lamar Jackson really did his thing that game. But for this matchup, I do have the Colts winning this one. I think it's pretty obvious. The Texans just haven't really been producing that much on both offense or defense. And if the Colts can keep it really close with the Ravens, I think they can keep it close to a lot of Super Bowl contending teams. So I do think they're going to get a pretty easy win against the Texans. Okay, so the next game on the list is the Rams versus the Giants. The Rams coming off of a win on Thursday Night Football against the Seahawks, which I already talked about my episode 30 video, if you do want to check that out. And then the Giants coming off of a loss against the Dallas Cowboys, which was a pretty bad loss for them because they did end up losing Daniel Jones to a concussion. He could barely even walk after he got up. And then they also lost Saquon Barkley to an ankle injury. And it does look like Saquon Barkley could come back. It doesn't look like a career-ending injury from what I've seen that the Giants have said. But I'm not too sure about Daniel Jones. But I don't think he's gonna play this game because that concussion looked really bad. So I don't think he's gonna play in that one. But for this game, I do have the Rams winning this one. Rams have a really good defense, and if they don't have Saquon Barkley or Daniel Jones for that offense, I'm really not too sure how they're going to be able to counteract that Rams defense. Kadarius Toney also might not be in after breaking Odell's record for the Giants, so he had a really good game, but he ended up throwing that punch, which I do think is going to cause him to miss his game. And I think Mike Glennon is the backup for the Giants, who didn't really look that good against the Cowboys after coming in for Daniel Jones after the concussion. And then, the run game is pretty much non-existent without Saquon Barkley, so I got the Rams winning this one. Now, the next game is going to be a pretty good one in my opinion. We got the Chargers versus the Ravens. The Chargers coming off of a exciting win over the Browns. That one was a really good game. 47-41 on a last-second touchdown by Austin Eckler, I believe. And then the Ravens coming off of a win, another close game against the Colts in overtime. And the Chargers on a nice 3-week win streak. Chiefs, Raiders, and the Browns. So I do think the Chargers are going to be able to continue this win streak and carry it over to this week and beat the Ravens. I think if they can keep it that close with the Browns, end up winning. And the Browns have a really good defense. I think they have the power to beat the Ravens. The Ravens don't have as good of a defense as the Browns, in my opinion. So I do think the Chargers will be able to have a really good receiving day, in my opinion, because of the cornerback injuries that they've had for the Ravens, or just their defensive injuries overall. So I do think the Chargers will be able to get like a lot of yards this game. And then the Ravens, I think it just doesn't really look that good for them this season. They look good still, but they're keeping a little too close to teams that I think shouldn't really be this close. So I think I got the Ravens losing this one, but it's going to be a really close game. Now, next game on the list, the Packers versus the Bears. Now, the Packers coming off of a win against the Bengals in overtime, which was a really bad one, kickers-wise, but they did still end up coming out with a win. And the Bears coming off of a pretty big win over the Raiders. For this game, I think the Packers are going to win this one. Even though they did play against a weaker defense than the Bears defense, I do think the Packers lately have had the Bears number. And I think the Packers are going to be able to, play well against the Bears defense. But I do think it's going to be a close one, but I do have the Packers winning this one. Now, the next game on the list, the Cardinals versus the Browns. I think this is going to be a good one. This could even be a possible Super Bowl matchup if this goes the way people want it to. But the Cardinals coming off of a win against the 49ers, which was a really low offensive production from Kyler Murray and that Cardinals offense. But it was a really good game for the Cardinals defense. And the Browns coming off of a loss, off of what people think is going to be the AFC Championship game. But the Browns, they really put it all out there, but that defense ended up allowing the Chargers to get that touchdown, put them in the lead. So obviously that didn't end well for the Browns, but they did a really good job, I think. And that was a really good game, so I got to give it up to them. But for this one, I do have Arizona winning this one and continuing their undefeated streak, moving on to 6-0, I think. And Cardinals, I think, have just been showing, it seems like they've been showing less offensive production, but that defense is still really good, and I do think it's going to stay really good. So the Browns, the Browns also had a really tough time against the Minnesota defense, which isn't even close to, I think, what the Cardinals defense is. So I do think the Cardinals could win this one. Now, next game on the list, is the Cowboys versus the Patriots. Now, the Cowboys coming off of a win, a pretty easy win against the Giants, unfortunately, mainly because the Giants' offensive stars were injured during that game. And then the Patriots coming off of a pretty easy win against the Texans. So both teams coming off of pretty easy wins. And I do think the Cowboys are going to win this one. Cowboys have shown some pretty good games. They've shown that they can, compete with the best of the teams. And I do think the Cowboys' high-powered offense is going to be able to compete against the Patriots' kind of lackluster defense, especially now with no Stephon Gilmore. That's definitely going to hurt them. So I do think the Cowboys are going to win this one. Now, next on the list is the Seahawks versus Steelers. Now, the Seahawks coming off of a loss on Thursday Night Football against the Rams, and then the Steelers coming off of a loss against the Broncos. Now, the Seahawks have a couple injuries, but main one being Russell Wilson out. So that's going to be interesting to see how Geno Smith does play in a full regulation game. And then the Steelers now having Juju Smith-Schuster out, and then they also have Chase Claypool with some injuries. I do think he's going to be out for this game as well. So it is going to be interesting to see what happens with both offenses now that they're missing some pretty big stars on both teams. But I do think the Seahawks will still come out with a win. Geno Smith, I do think people are saying MVP Geno Smith because just like ironically because of how well he was able to do coming in for a really good quarterback. But I do think he's still a pretty decent quarterback, and he has really good weapons. So if you get a decent quarterback and you got DK and Tyler Lockett, I think that's going to be hard to stop. So I do have the Seahawks winning this one. Now, next game on the list, Monday Night Football, and the last game on the list, we got Bills versus Titans. And I got the Bills winning this one. Bills coming off of a really big win over the Chiefs. They're able to do really good against that Chiefs offense. And then the Titans coming off of a pretty easy win against the Jaguars. So I do think the Titans have their guard down a little bit here, but their team wasn't really able to do much against the Jets, which was really concerning. Maybe that was just an off day. Also, they didn't have A.J. Brown, which does help them in this game as well. But just that Bills defense and the Bills offense, they looked a little off starting the season, but it seems like they got back on track for this week, or for this past week. So I got the Bills winning this one. But I do think it's going to be close, but Bills, I think, are just a team that could make it to a Super Bowl this year. And that'll be all. I did forget to say the records for each of us, but my prediction record is 50-29. I did have a lot of misses this week, and then your guys' record is 50-29. You guys were hitting on some matchups that I didn't think would win, but clearly you guys knew, so that'll be all for today's week predictions. Leave your predictions or, some pretty big, bold predictions for players or teams in the comments. And share this episode, like it, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, follow if you're listening on Spotify. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.